You're watching Truth Talk News. The Rothschilds are the undisputed rulers of the financial world. Their power and consolidation of power continues to this day. The bulk of their power came from financing wars, and the biggest windfall for the Rothschilds was, of course, the defeat of Napoleon at Waterloo. You see, Rothschild had agents that were able to courier the information of Napoleon's defeat and scurry the information back to London ahead of all other sources. To further illustrate this, after the fall of Napoleon, the Rothschilds turned all their hatred against the Romanovs. In 1825, they poisoned Alexander I. In 1855, they poisoned Nicholas I. Other assassinations followed, culminating on the night of November 6, 1917, when a dozen Red Guards drove up a truck up to the Imperial Bank building in Moscow. They loaded the Imperial jewel collection and $700 million in gold, loot totaling more than $1 billion. The new regime also confiscated the 150 million acres in Russia that were personally owned by the Tsar. See, this was a power grab. This was the Rothschilds consolidating and working in concert with the Rockefellers and the other ruling class families, and to steal the wealth of the Romanov family. They did this, and they funded communism, and they funded the Bolsheviks, who then sacked Russia, but all the money was in banks that they owned. All the money was in banks across Europe and across the United States and everywhere else. It was a great plan, and again, Rothschild's just so cunning, and in his efforts, very cunning individual. I'm going to refer to historian John Reeves, a Rothschild partisan, who reveals in his book The Rothschilds, Financial Rulers of Nations, 1887, page 167, that one cause of Nathan's success was the secrecy with which he shrouded and the tortuous policy with which he misled those who watched him the keenest. There were vast fortunes to be made on the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo. As the two huge armies closed in for battle, Nathan Rothschild had his agents working feverishly on both sides of the line to gather the most accurate possible information as the battle proceeded. Additional Rothschild agents were on hand to carry the intelligence bulletins to a Rothschild command post strategically located nearby. Late on the afternoon of June 15, 1815, a Rothschild representative jumped on board a specially chartered boat and headed out in the channel in a hurried dash for the English coast. In his possession was a top-secret report from the Rothschild Secret Service agents on the progress of the crucial battle. This intelligence data would prove indispensable to Nathan in making some vital decisions. The special agent was met at Folkestone the following morning at dawn by Nathan Rothschild himself. After quickly scanning the highlights of the report, Rothschild was on his way again, speeding towards London and the stock exchange. Arriving at the exchange amid frantic speculation on the outcome of the battle, Nathan took up his usual position beside the famous Rothschild pillar. Now again, this shows you how what a deceptively wicked and evil and poker-faced scum this man and their whole family, and they train their family, and they breed them to be this way. It is a breed, ladies and gentlemen. It's a breed. These ultra elite. Make no mistake about it. Okay, without a sign of emotion, without the slightest change of facial expression, the stony-faced, flint-eyed chief of the House of Rothschild gave a predetermined signal to his agents who were stationed nearby. Rothschild's agents immediately began to dump consoles on the market. As hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of consoles poured onto the market, their value started to slide. Then they began to plummet. Nathan continued to lean against his pillar, emotionless, expressionless. He continued to sell and sell and sell. Consols kept falling. Word began to sweep through the stock exchange. Rothschild knows. Rothschild knows. Wellington is lost at Waterloo. Well, of course he didn't lose, but the selling turned into a panic as people rushed to unload their worthless consols or paper money for gold and silver in the hope of retaining at least part of their wealth. Consols continued their nosedive towards oblivion. Now, this is what they do. They take and they control the market. Perfect example right here. What they do is stealing the wealth of the people. I think it was said of the Rothschilds that the Rothschilds' wealth is made at the expense and destruction of other nations. I think that's an accurate statement, very close to it. Anyway, the selling turned into a panic. So what happens after several hours of feverish trading? The consoles lay in ruins, and it was selling for about 5 cents on the dollar. Nathan Rothschild, emotionless about, and they do this again. This is what they did with the mortgage market. What they've done with these houses, corporations that went out of business because of the economic collapse that they create. A short time later, official news arrived at the British capital that England was now the master of the European scene. So unbelievable. Within seconds, the console skyrocketed to above its original value, and as the significance of the British victory began to sink into the public consciousness, the value of consoles rose even higher. So there we go. That's what they do. This is what they did. They just, at the expense of people, lost their fortunes. They lost their homes. They lost their livelihoods. Absolute wickedness. Absolute wickedness. After the fall of Napoleon, the Rothschilds turned all their hatred against the Romanovs. In 1825, they poisoned Alexander I. In 1855, they poisoned Nicholas I. Other assassinations followed, culminating on the night of November 6, 1917, when a dozen Red Guards drove a truck up to the Imperial Bank building in Moscow and loaded the Imperial jewel collection in gold and loot totaling more than $1 billion. The new regime also confiscated the 150 million acres in Russia personally owned by the Tsar. So they took all the wealth there, but as I mentioned, so Napoleon falls. The Rothschilds make billions. Now they go after the Romanov family. And they fund the Bolshevik Revolution along with the Rockefellers and Wall Street. The reason being was there was just exorbitant amounts of money in banks all across Europe and across the United States that the Tsar had money in. So the Bolsheviks get everything in their country and all the wealth there and the gold and whatever they find in the country, but there was billions of dollars outside of the country. And they still have it to this day. I kid you not, this is no lie. The money has never been claimed by the family or anything. There was attempts, Alexis and Anastasia famously, but the money vanished into the banksters' pockets. The interest on the loan would be $50 billion in '84, so maybe it would probably be like 200. Just the interest would be like $200 billion from that time. I'll just give a quick overview of that. Let's just give you an example of how much money was spread out before the Bolsheviks, funded by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and Wall Street, took out the Tsar. Okay. He had $5 million in guaranteed trust, $1 million in the National City Bank, which is again Rothschild and Rockefeller banks. There was $5 million in each bank. Between 1905 and 1910, the Tsar sent more than $900 million to be deposited in the 6 leading New York banks: Chase, National City, Guaranteed Trust, J.P. Morgan, Hanover, and Manufacturers Trust. These were the principal banks controlled by the House of Rothschild through their American agents J.P. Morgan and Kuhn & Loeb. They were also the 6 New York banks which bought the controlling stock in the Federal Reserve of New York in 1914. They have held control of the stock ever since. The Tsar also had $115 million in 4 English banks. He had $35 million in the Bank of England, $25 million in Barings, $25 million in Barclays, $30 million in Lloyd's Bank in Paris. The Tsar had $100 million in Banque de France, $80 million in the Rothschild Bank of Paris. In Berlin, he had $132 million in the Mendelssohn Bank. It's just unbelievable. The Rothschilds are responsible for funding both sides of every war since the War of 1812. They've profited by it. They are simply evil. And I think Mick Jagger, when he refers to Sympathy for the Devil, is discussing the Rothschild family. Think about it. Lucifer. The Masonic connection, of course. But he's the one. He's discussing the Rothschild breed. I'm Howard Neiman. Thank you for watching Truth Talking This.
We have a lot of huge problems. We have the nuclear problem in Korea. We have the nuclear problem in Iran. We have, of course, the whole array of problems, each of which, Afghanistan, and so forth. But then we have the financial issues. But they really are issues of the construction of a new world order. That's what this is about.
Already, fingerprints and iris scans verify passenger identities at airports. Within 10 years, that technology may be even more widespread. And look for more complex facial recognition programs that scan a crowd of thousands looking for a single terrorist. The latest home security locks use fingerprints to control deadbolts. And at the Jewel Osco grocery store in Chicago, some customers pay using their fingerprints. No paper or plastic.
You don't really need anything other than your hand, and you already got that with you.
Now the UN is backing a plan to change all of that and create a new global currency.
The Second Amendment is not about duck hunting, but it's about our rights, all of our rights, to be able to protect ourselves from all that you guys are doing.
Sell out. These brothers go false flag, terror, power, Bill Gates, Henrys, the world order line.
Their capacity to impose
with cut and paste,
over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low.
Your mind.
It was easier to control
Libyans, fun with world's not as it is. The CIA smuggles drugs while Wachovia was far London. Then give the proceeds to the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now the IRS takes money out of every single check. Money created out of thin air and leave you with debt. They want to make you a serf, a slave to their demand. They want to take your life in every way they can. Fluoride, GMO, vaccines, chemtrails, United Nations genocide. The world they show us is not real. This is how they kill and steal. Rothschild, Bundy, Rockefeller, Club of Rome. On the Georgia guys, soldiers written in stone. Cut through the
and on nights like this one, we can say to those families who have lost loved ones in Al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done.
The lethality of their power is greater than ever. Their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. And in earlier times, it was easier to control a million people than physically to kill a million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill a million people than to control a million people.
Something's gotten lost, and something is the truth. What is it in us that seeks the truth? Is it our mind, or is it our heart?